Okay, good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of Monday, November 28th, 2016. At this time, can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Here.
Councilmember Lane.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Here.
Councilmember Ryno.
Here.
And Mayor Vierra.
Here. Next, we will move to the invocation by, is Mr. Vargas here this evening?
He did not check in this afternoon.
Okay. Shep, would you do us the honor of the invocation this evening, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance after.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, look down upon this meeting tonight. Give our council members wisdom, give them courage, and look down upon all of the city of Ceres and all the citizens here. Keep us safe, keep us from all harm, and above all, bless our fire and police officers as they go about the task of keeping us safe and from harm. And please, more rain. Our city needs the water. Our state needs the water. We believe in you and your presence to help us survive. We are gracious for your help. Bless this city and all its people, and keep our military and other emergency people under your wing to keep them safe. Bring them all home from wherever they may be. And we ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. This evening we have a couple of presentations for many, many years of service. We wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Farren Williams, who's been our IT manager, and Cheryl Carpenter, who's been a part of the support services. They're going to be retiring, and so I wanted to take this opportunity to present you with a couple of plaques. I will go ahead and read them here. First one for Cheryl Carpenter. In recognition of your 37 years of outstanding service as Support Services Supervisor, we will be forever grateful for your expertise, knowledge, and support. You embody our values of integrity, commitment, and service while exemplifying steadfast dedication and loyalty. With much respect and gratitude, presented this 28th day of November 2016. Wow, when you look at 37 years, that's quite an accomplishment. I definitely want to, on behalf of myself and the rest of the council, thank you for that. It's a rarity that someone stays in the same position or with the same organization for 37 years, and you should be commended for that, so thank you. I also wanted to read this plaque for Farren. In recognition of your 33 years of outstanding service as Information Technology Manager, we will be forever grateful for your expertise, knowledge, and support. You embody our values of integrity, commitment, and service while exemplifying steadfast dedication and loyalty. With much respect and gratitude, presented this 28th day of November 2016. So again, 33 years, wow, that's an amazing accomplishment, and want to thank definitely both of you for your dedication to the city. I'm sure you've seen some good times, some bad times, and hopefully as you move on to the next chapter in your life, that things are very rosy and do very well. So with that, I would like to present these plaques to you.
Thank you for this. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I was an 18-year-old dispatcher starting. And I look forward to whatever the second chapter is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city manager, all the department heads I worked with over the years. They made my job a lot easier by working as a team. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the citizens of Ceres.
Thank you. You will definitely have, both of you have huge shoes for us to fill, so thank you again for all of your support. With that, we will move to citizens' communication to council on matters not included on the agenda. While the city council welcomes and encourages participation in city council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the city council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the city council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the city council. Citizens are entitled to address the city council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. So at this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? If so, please come forth and state your name.
Leonard Shepard. You know, those two people, don't leave yet. I got something to say to you. They exemplify public service. They are the kind of people you want to have working for you. I'm sure there were times that they said to themselves, what am I doing here? And then they blinked their eyes and said, oh yeah, I know what I'm here for. That's the kind of people you want working for the city. That's the kind of people you want sitting up here. That's the kind of people you'd like to have the citizens to come here and sit out there and see what their city government is all about. Well, we don't have much of that. But those two people, like I say, exemplify the type of worker that you want on your team. I only did 35 years in the fire service, and there were times that I just like them said, what in the heck am I doing here? But when you do a good job, and at the very end, when you retire, you can say to yourself, I accomplished something. I'm going to go to a retirement party down in San Diego in a couple months of a kid that's 55 now, and he's retiring from the fire service, and I got him started. And there's a whole bunch of others that I know that I've helped start. So it gives you a good feeling when someone retires and you know that they are big shoes to fill. And I'm sure they probably got about size 18s. So congratulations to them.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay, with that, we will move on. We have no appointments to boards and commissions this evening. Conflict of interest declaration. Is there anyone that would like to declare a conflict of interest on any of the consent calendar items or new business? Okay, with that, we'll move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or the public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. This time, is there anyone on the council that would like a consent calendar item pulled for further discussion? Okay, anyone in the audience? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
Move to accept items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Yes.
Councilmember Lane.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryno.
Yes.
And Mayor Vierra.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. You probably, okay. We have no unfinished business this evening. We have no public hearing. We do have one new business item. Resolution number 2016-148, approving membership in the West Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, Joint Powers Authority, and the City Council to elect one City Council member to be a board member of the JPA Board and another City Council member to serve as the alternate. Jeremy?
Good evening. Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA for short. SGMA was put into law within the California Water Code in January of 2015. Purpose of SGMA is to coordinate groundwater management activities within each basin. This Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, within this basin, there's 14 agencies. There will be 10 voting members. 4 of them will be associate members. And the staff, along with all the member agencies, all 14 agencies, diligently over the last year or 18 months worked to agree on a JPA. Once the JPA has been established, there will be a meeting in January to officially send out the public notice for the formation of the agency, followed by a follow-up meeting in February approving the adoption of the agency, approval to submit the application to the State Water Board, approval of a budget. The expectation is that there should be 3 to 4 meetings per year. We know how strapped everybody is. We're really trying to keep that down. With that said, we're looking for recommendation to approve the resolution and 2 council members to sit on the board, one as a voting member and one as an alternate.
Okay, a couple questions. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask them anyway. Just for the audience's clarification, this is a requirement of the state, correct, to form this?
So there's the state came down in 2015 and put this rule into place, this law, and there's 117 basins across the state of California. They deemed them as critically overdrafted basin, which is what we are. We have a partner, the East Side Irrigation District, is creating their own groundwater sustainability agency. So we have to coordinate our efforts with them to develop a plan by 2020 to be approved by the state for the critically overdrafted basin. Yes.
So, and it's a fair statement to say that if all of us can't get along and join this, that the state will come in and say that Big Brother can do a better job than we can and therefore dictate what's going on. So it's important that we be a part of this
Right.
group.
If we don't have the plan in place by July 1st, Big Brother steps in and says, this is what you're gonna do.
Okay.
It's
Okay, any questions of staff on this? Is there anyone in the audience that had any questions or comments on this? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion and direction.
Well, I think the obvious person to be the board member representing Ceres would be the mayor because of his knowledge of water.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. All right, how about a recommendation on the alternate? Might recommend that I know we have the surface water project, and I know Councilmember Lane is on that. I don't know if he's interested, might work out well, but it's up to you.
I'm fine with it.
Is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay, with that, it looks like I drew the short straw along with Councilmember Lane, so does anyone want to make a motion to that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Resolution 2016-148, for the mayor to be the main individual and the alternate to be Mr. Lane.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Yes.
Councilmember Lane.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryno.
Yes.
And Mayor Vierra.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, discussion items. Item number 12, California Senate Bill 415, voter participation, direction regarding moving to a statewide election date. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. Technical difficulties. Yeah, IT's left the building. And the funny part is, I'm the IT manager currently, so I think I can figure that out.
I hope you're not getting paid extra.
You're wearing awful small shoes today.
Yeah, exactly. Darn it, I didn't put those size 18s on, Len. There we go. All right, apologies. Right? All right, so SB 415, referred to as the Voter Participation Act. So this law was signed into law by the governor September 1st of 2015, and the premise of this law was basically that for those jurisdictions across the state, and there's a lot of them, that had off-year elections, so those that had either an odd-year election or even those participating in different months of the year, primary season, that those particular jurisdictions were having lower voter turnout than the rest of the state, who were participating in the traditional even-year elections that coincided with either the gubernatorial election or the presidential election. So with that premise, they put this law into place with the stated goal of being to increase the voter participation rate. So the law, as it indicates, says basically you can no longer have an off-year election if your voter turnout in those off-year elections is more than 25% less than your voter turnout in those years that everyone votes. And so they've indicated two key dates. The first one being a transition date. You have to have a plan in place for how you're going to make the move by January 1st of 2018 with the implementation date of November of 2022, meaning you can't have an election in an off year anytime after November of 22. The term can go past there, but you can't conduct an election in an off year after that date, provided you have a transition plan in place. So the question for the council, first question is, do we have a problem, or do we meet the requirements of the law? And pretty clearly we do. You can see in the top portion of this slide the results of the last 4 elections. Again, the law tells us what to use. So our average turnout for the last 4 elections, 51%. If you look at during the statewide turnout period, and then if you look at our last 4 city council elections, 17%. So you can see we meet the criteria pretty clearly. Taking it one step further, looking at the other option of moving to a primary date and an even year primary date, we have the same problem there as well. A 21% turnout, average turnout compared to a 51%. So gives you that same criteria that we're below that threshold that the law sets. Therefore, meaning we have to move from our odd year election to an even year election, and it needs to be a November even year. So with that transition, first I'll stop there, see if there's any questions before I move on to kind of what the options are. So again,
No, but it's really sad when you look at what percentage we had in our general municipal election. I mean, that's really sad to me.
really small number. Couple that with, as this council was concerned with, the district election piece and a low voter turnout with the district election, we really have a small number of folks electing the representatives of this body in the future. So again, another state mandate, another thing that the state in their infinite wisdom to help us all govern better that makes it a difficult challenge. But part of it is people getting out and voting, but that's the attempt by this legislation is to try and get more voter participation. Whether it works or not, we'll have to see. But bottom line is, we really don't have a choice. We have to move in that direction. So the next thing to really discuss are the options. How do we get there, and how do we move from our odd year election to the even year? So there's really about 9 different options, but because of the primary dates kind of being out of the picture, that takes out 3 or 4 options. There's a few other options that would be kind of treating 5 council seats differently. I mean, you could do, the next opening, you could stagger those and treat them kind of differently. The 3 options I've presented here are really the most common of the other agencies that have gone this route already, and that treats everybody pretty much the same in terms of those seats. So that's why we kind of listed these as the three primary options, and there's variations if the council really wants to get into those, but this seems like the most likely. And again, with the other cities who have gone down this road already, this is the top three that are kind of coming to the top. So the first option, option one, would be extend the existing terms by 1 year. So the existing council, as seated this evening, elected in 2013 or 2015, those terms would move from a 2017 end date to a 2018 end date in November, and then in 2019 would move to 2020. That would require an ordinance change for that to be effective. Ordinance change be in place, and then it would automatically extend those terms with the adoption of that ordinance. They would have to take separate council action we'd have to come back for. The option two would be reducing the next term, so the election in 2017 as it sits today, that would be reduced to a 3-year term. So instead of ending in 2021, it would end in 2020, and then the 2019 would end in 2022. So again, those would fix it. That next term would be a 3-year. The last option there would be extending the next terms, 2017, 2019, extending those by 1 year to a 5-year term, pushing out the dates to 2022 and 2024. Those would be also consistent with the requirements of the law. This option 3 is the option that the school district, Ceres Unified School District, recently chose. Seeing variations across the state between those 3 options, and it really is council and the public's decision-making process from a staff perspective. Option 1 has some value in terms of some cost savings, not having an election in 2017. There's also some relationship between the general plan efforts that has obviously some benefits there, but any of these options would meet the intent of the law. It's really, at this point, it's council's discussion and conversation as to what works best for the council in making this transition. Again, not our choice, not the council's choice. This is the requirements of the law, trying to find the best way for our community to meet the state law. So with that, what we're looking for this evening is the direction. So again, if we chose option 1, it'd be an ordinance. Option 2 or 3, it's just resolution indicating what we're going to do. And the resolution would come at a later date when those actual terms were changed. And we would bring back, regardless, whatever the direction is, we bring that back in January and hope to get that process completed and done as soon as possible, so that we're, way out in front of, any time frame associated with the election process, so that everybody has all the notice that we possibly can give. And with that, open for any questions.
Could you go back to this slide? So
Yep.
option 2 is to, you say the next term, reduce it by a year, so that would be a 3-year term?
Correct.
And
That'd be the
then
next.
option 3 would be a 5-year term?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so I would wrap my head around this, so in the 2017 election, it would be for 3 years?
Correct.
So their terms would be up in 2020?
Correct.
And the 2019 election, their terms would be?
3 years as well.
3 years as well. So we have district elections that are going on with kind of staggered terms because, okay.
Well, that's the way. I mean, it's set up staggered anyways. So I mean, we're already, the 2, District 1 and 2 will be up in 17 as it stands today. So if you don't make any changes, those 2 districts would be up, and they'd be for a 4-year term. We've got to make some change to that. So you either affect the current terms or you affect the next terms.
And this is because people don't want to get out and vote.
That's what the author of the legislation is indicating, that if you put it on the date of the gubernatorial or presidential election, more people are likely to vote. Our numbers seem to show it, but there's also evidence to show that on those heavier ballots, like this last one we just saw, some people don't make it all the way to the bottom of the ballots. But it does show that there's better participation. A study that was done a few years ago by the Public Policy Institute of California indicated that you could see an increase of 20 to 36% if this were in place across the state of California. Not sure, it's hard to say until it's in place, but again, we really don't have a choice.
Okay. All right, I'll open up for council for any comments. Or, well, before I do that, you want me to open up it all? I might as well open it up to the public. Is there anyone that'd like to speak on this item?
I don't think you're gonna fix any apathy that's here in Ceres. I just don't see it. You know, people don't care enough to shut off the TV on Monday nights to come to the city council meetings. They're gonna, the same way about voting. I hear people say, oh, why should I vote? And don't pay any attention to me anyway. Well, you know, I don't think that a law is going to change the apathy. I think the law is just going to make things more so that some other bureaucrat will come along and think, well, we need to change that law a little bit. And pretty soon, nobody's going to vote because they don't understand. Even the city council and the city government won't understand what they're supposed to do. You know? I mean, I can tell by the looks on your face that you don't understand what's going on, just like I don't. Toby may understand it somewhat, but I can tell from him you're not sure that this is ever going to work.
We're just following the law.
I know.
The state makes the laws, and we got to follow them.
To mess things up requires a state government, I think, sometimes. So anyway, you got a decision to make. If I said it, I'd say, everybody's gone, and then we start all over, and then you can put everything onto the cycle that you want. But that wouldn't work either, so it's just a good thought.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to Councilmember Ryno.
Well, I think that we've allocated a lot of money for our general plan update, and is that anticipated to be finished in the early 2018? Sometime in 2018?
Yes, early 2018.
Okay. So given that and the cost savings and not having an election for the next 2 years, I would support option 1.
Okay. Councilmember Durossette?
Yeah, you stated other cities are doing the same thing right now. They're having to battle it, and again, if they have the odd year elections and stuff. And I have to agree with Councilmember Ryno in regards to obviously the savings and however much that is. I think I'd like to know that at some point in time, maybe what we were able to save.
It's about, general rule of thumb, about $30,000 to $40,000 a year for the election years to handle our local election.
So we're going to be able to save that for at least a year.
And that's general fund money?
That's general fund money, yes.
And then on top of, obviously the general plan is a big task. And I would like to go on the record to say that serving with you guys this amount of time has been a pleasure. And I think everybody's doing a darn good job. And, by allowing us, obviously with the district elections, because, one of the things with the district elections is we know it's going to be a very low voter turnout. If you look at the school district numbers in regards to what actually an individual is able to win, I just think it's in the best interest of the city, and again, it's my viewpoint in regards to option 1. Even if we save $40,000, and that's the only reason why we do it, we save $40,000, and maybe that keeps a police officer or firefighter there. So,
Okay, Vice Mayor Kline?
I look at this thing and I listen to Councilmember Ryno and Councilmember Durossette. And we just had a general plan update meeting with the joint planning commission and city council, and it was open to the public, and they gave us some options. And yet, as you went around the table, there was very good input by everybody present. And I think that with knowing that and the undertaking, I would feel that we would do a disservice to our general plan if we disrupt it right in the middle of it. So with that being said, I think, if we extend, we take option 1 and extend it by 1 year, we're at least going to get, districts 1 and 2 to stay a part of the general plan update. and the direction that we're going. So I would support option number one.
Okay, Councilmember Lane?
Well, I don't want to be redundant. Certainly, it's an opportunity. I've stated that I'm not going to run again for office, but, it gives another opportunity here because of the general plan and the effort that we put into it. For myself, to extend another year would be great, to be able to see that through, and I think it's that important to the city. I've kind of taken the standpoint from where I sit today and where I'm going to transition to when I leave this spot, and trying to choose people to fill my spot, if you will, that I can mentor and that sort of thing. So I've kind of taken that track already. But again, I think option one would be something that would, for the city, more than myself, I think would be the best option, just because of the things that we have going on with the general plan. It's been stated, and there's other things too that we're working on closely right now too. So I would support option one.
Okay, well then, I'll look for direction. It sounds like we've heard pretty much from everyone, so.
That's all we need is the direction. Yep, and we'll draft the ordinance and come back as soon as we can in January. Probably likely be the second meeting in January. We bring the ordinance for the first introduction, first reading.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item number 13, lighting and landscape discussion. You doing this, Mr. Wells, or is Jeremy handling
Staff
it?
is going to handle this
Okay.
one. She's super excited about it too. If I can get to the right.
Is this another thing the state's making us do?
No, this one's
No.
on us. Show will work. This one goes to the viewer. There we go. It's really weird.
Hi, I'm Robin Klepfer. I'm Public Works Administrative Analyst, and I have been working on lighting and landscape for about the last 8 months, getting to know it better, doing research on the background of it and the history. And every year we've come, as the staff report states, more and more we're noticing a big difference in revenue versus cost. And it's the structure of the lighting and landscape district, which was originally formed in the city in '87, but was something the state allowed in '72. So this is an overall map of the districts. Anything in yellow is considered residential. You have your West Point and your Brown, in your red and pink, Eastgate. There's Devant back in the green, and then Dara, a section of the Dara is actually in its own lighting and landscape zone. Affected parcels, roughly half of the city is actually in some type of zone, whether it be the general zone or their individuals. We only have one park to date in any zone, and that is Sam Ryno. That is in the Brown area. So like I said, roughly half the homes in the city are in some sort of lighting and landscape zone. And Dara is actually the reason it says 76 units. It's 15 parcels, but the cost is split per unit per parcel. That's how the zone was originally created. These are projections for 16-17. This was the engineer's report that was already submitted and you accepted. It's showing the difference in the cost, what we're allowed to have for revenue. And as the staff report stated, the revenue is based on CPI, is the only increase we can go off, and the CPI has not kept up with the actual cost of each district.
Just a question for you on those numbers. Are those the cost projections for just the highlighted areas, or is that for the entire city?
That is just the zones.
Okay.
It does not include the general part of the city.
Okay.
So right now, technically, this is lighting and landscape district, that's on the tax assessor roll. And like I said, the cost is what we've cost, revenue is all we're allowed to put on the assessor. So what we're asking council today is basically some direction on some different options to possibly find a mechanism to increase revenues for these lighting and landscape districts. The first is to conduct an RFP to hire a contractor to assume all responsibilities of landscaping. That includes items such as actually repairing irrigation, fertilization, aeration, tree maintenance. That's in Sam Ryno and along the right-of-ways. And then, and actually have a full contractor come in and do that work and see what the true cost and benefit is to have somebody do that work. Then if you don't want that option, the next option we're saying is assess the cost benefit of need for increased revenues and prepare a Prop 218. Or the other one would be explore another funding mechanism as an alternative to a Prop 218.
Okay, before I think we get to those questions or options, question I have, what do we do with the areas that aren't in the LLD?
Anything that's not an LLD is paid for through the general fund.
Okay, so what's being presented to us this evening, and this is just a question I have, is the LLD, which is half of the city, approximately half of the city, appears to be going in the negative.
Correct.
Each and every year. And so we're looking to do something to neutralize that.
Correct, because the general fund's having to pick up the difference in what the lighting and landscape can't cover,
Okay.
or we've had to reduce services.
Okay, so that takes care of half of the problem if we do this. But as I've always sat up here on this dais, I believe in being fair and equal to all of our citizens. So one of the pieces of the puzzle that I would want to see is, what are we going to do for the other half? Because I don't feel it's right to tax half of the citizens for the LLD for their area, unless that money is going to be in a separate bucket just for that area, which I'm sure it is, because that's the law.
Correct.
But it still creates a deficiency in the general fund for the other half of the city. And maybe that's not a question that I should be directing to you, but it's one that...
The problem there is, this lighting and landscaping districts were put in place in 1987, so every house that was built after 87 knew going in what that was. Any house built before that, the assumption was that the property tax and other funding mechanisms in the city would cover those general services, primarily for lighting. The problem gets continually compounded. The older the home, the less the lighting. So a house that was built in the 80s prior to 87 may have lighting to our standard. But if it was built in the 40s or 50s, it doesn't have lighting to today's standards. So getting those folks who are low lit, or in some cases no lit, to pay for a street lighting mechanism to be comprehensive is a pretty significant undertaking. So what you're asking for is some other option, and this was considered years ago about a citywide LLD, so you form it across the city, but that again takes a vote, and it's a Prop 218 process to expand the district to cover all boundaries. Then you get into a cost-benefit analysis and its assessment district, so you have to show a direct benefit, which is another difficult analysis. You get into other options where you consider a CFD, which has a capital component, where you could build into that system, fixing the low-lit areas, so somebody is actually paying for the installation of the light as well as the ongoing capital. That would be another option. Again, takes a vote of the people. The last option would be changing to something like a parcel tax or something. Again, that would take a vote, not a 218 process, but an actual vote on a ballot to move to a parcel tax or something of that nature. Last option would be something like a sales tax that is specifically for a particular purpose. Difficult at best on all of those options, and the idea of folks willingly wanting to tax themselves for street lighting, because that's really the biggest challenge here is the street lighting. The other funding for landscape maintenance is lesser in the grand scheme of things. Street lighting, actually, a portion of that is covered by our gas tax currently, so there's an offset there. But the bigger picture there, getting that fixed is a difficult basis, and I don't see the voters of this city going forward at a current, and that's why we're recommending going the process of trying to get the contractor, figure out the first piece and get those costs nailed down, and then really get this thing built in a better fashion in terms of our accounting so that we get to that next piece. And that next piece, one aspect of it, as you recall, a few years ago on the lighting side of things, we did a LED project where we changed all of our street lights to the LEDs, but that was done with a loan. So there's still about 16 years left on that loan. Once that loan's paid off, our costs for this piece of it will go down pretty significantly. So you'll start to see that imbalance go away. You won't be able to do LEDs on most of those lights around the rest of the city because a lot of them are TID lights and we don't have the controls. We don't technically own those lights. So,
Okay.
long-winded, complicated answer that means it's going to be difficult no matter what we do on the lighting side.
Right. I fully understand that there's a shortfall in the LLDs that were formed in '87 and that we would need to rectify that. But I hope you understand, I guess, a little of my concern if half of the citizens are going to increase the amount that they're paying for the lighting and landscape district.
Yep.
And the other half of the city, which is coming from the general fund, which is deficient, which, by the way, also pays for their police and fire services, it's a little disproportionate as to who's paying their fair share. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, I'm going to subject the lighting and landscaping folks to pay their fair share, which is true, they need to pay their fair share, but they're also at the demise of the services that the whole city gets through police and fire. Does that make sense?
It does.
I mean,
but the argument against this is they knew when they bought that house. As a disclosure on that, anybody prior to that, that was the deal, right? The deal changed. The same thing with CFDs, right? We also have areas in the city that have community facilities district. Eastgate's a perfect example. They've got an $800 a year on their property tax that's paying for other maintenances on top of that. Again, it's a noticed requirement and it does create a disparity. That Eastgate area is paying for police, fire, parks, on top of an LLD.
okay, so explain to me, if a house burns down and is not part of an LLD, but it was built after '87, in the other areas that are in white, are they subject to any LLD?
It's on the property tax, so yeah, it's the property, not necessarily the structure. So yes, anywhere.
But if they're not in a landscaping,
No, no.
then they're not.
They're not.
So it
Correct.
could be a new home.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Yeah, if it's not colored on that map, it is not included in the lighting and landscape district, so it is not subject to it.
Personally, I have a problem with that because it's not, I mean, if I want a developer and do infill development and I just want to bulldoze, which we talked about at the general plan.
If you did a subdivision, then it would be subject. It would be required, a condition of approval, a subdivision, if you were dividing property, it would be required to annex into the district. That is
And
under
dividing
requirement.
is two?
Any subdivision of land, yes. So if you had a single-family lot that was going to be subdivided into two, that parcel map process would trigger annexation into the district.
Okay, well, me personally, and I'll open it up for the rest of the council here, I believe in being equality across the whole city, not just the LLD folks. So obviously, the LLD folks, yes, need to pay their fair share, but I think we need to look at some other mechanism for the other half of the city, which, from what I'm hearing from you, is the most deficient of all, that they continue to go further and further into it, which eats more into our police and fire, which protects the whole city. So that's just,
All takes a vote of the people, so at the end of the day.
well,
it's just-
and if the people don't want to vote for those services, you get what you pay for, so.
And that's the argument, really, for the folks who are low-lit and underlit. They are not getting that service. So do they want to tax themselves to do that is the fundamental question. And then it's the mechanism that's used to do that. And any of those mechanisms is difficult.
Well, Dara is a good example of that. The Dara area, the smaller back half of Dara actually said, the property owners got together and said, hey, can you put in some extra lighting and do a little bit of landscaping? They chose to do that themselves.
As opposed to be a part of an LLD?
No, as part of being the general, they are actually their own little LLD, the last half of Dara, and they actually chose to have better lighting installed and a little bit of landscaping that we maintain.
They actually chose to be annexed.
Yeah.
That was a decision they made many years ago, early 90s, I believe.
I'm still going through quite a few of the resos.
Yep.
Okay, any comments from the council, or would you like me to open it up to the public first?
Well, didn't we, when we had we did the water meters, right? Any house that was built prior to 1992, I think,
That's correct.
they had to have the meter, or didn't have to have the meter, and the ones built after 1992, it was 90.
The house that was built after 90, they had to have a water meter. They got around the law because it had to have a water meter. Didn't technically say that the water meter had to be read. So then they had to go and reinvent that law to basically come in 2010 and say every house has to have a meter and be read. So it was all about the same time, the 90 and the 87 rule, and there was a few other ones in there too.
But I guess my point as a council member at that time, that we all decided that we were gonna put the burden of the finances on everyone. And it wasn't fair that somebody else who had a house in 1978 could run their water all they wanted to, not having a meter, and then the ones obviously 92. So I kind of see where you're going with that, but I guess the only concern I have is what you stated is that there's other areas that are paying and other areas are not paying. And so, you know, I mean, it's...
Well, it's again, the difference is what the expectation was in the 80s and well before that. The expectation was that property taxes and other general fund money was sufficient to handle new development. As we get into the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, there's a recognition that property tax as a basis of funding municipal services is falling short. It's not enough. Especially in a county like Stanislaus County, where we get 6 cents on every dollar for property tax. You know, and the county's in the same boat. There's not enough property tax. It's really going to the schools and to other jurisdictions in the state because we're frozen at a Prop 13 level. And that creates that problem. So cities like Ceres move to other mechanisms to make new development pay for its own way. This is a mechanism that was used first, LLDs, starting in the 80s, and then in the 90s and the 2000s, the CFDs was chosen as another mechanism for new development to pay its own way. Here we are, 20, 30 years down the road, and you have a disparity. You've got the newest development paying its full share, and the oldest development not necessarily paying its fair share. And so the question is, how do you rectify that? And the answer is there's no easy answer.
So now, isn't that the banner that everybody says, new development doesn't pay its way?
That is not truly the case, because that's what these mechanisms are done. And the idea, the CFD and the LLD, is to mitigate that. And that's something that's used very regularly to mitigate that, so that we can clearly show, and as we're working on the West Landing financing plan, we're showing that and that's part of the economics, to ensure that the revenue equals the cost of services to provide it. So new development is definitely paying its own way. I would say older development is not.
So the battle cry should be older development doesn't pay its way.
And
Okay.
you see that on a lot of...
Councilmember Ryno?
Robin, can you go back one and show us our options, please? I think before we kind of look at the city as a whole, I would be interested to hire, not necessarily hire a contractor, but to see what they would charge. And I would be curious to see what we can do for those LLDs already, instead of just going out to the general public and saying that we need you to pay your way, but do we really know how much you need to pay? You know what I'm saying? Instead of it just being so broad, I would be interested to see what we can actually do with these LLDs to make them kind of cost neutral.
And that's really the plan of attack here. Recommendation is to kind of move down this list, and the first piece, go out for the RFP, get the costs, and if we get good costs, then we'd be able to save some money, and that $30,000 in the previous slide on the landscaping side, maybe much less than that, which hopefully would minimize our need for a Prop 218 related to landscaping. And if it doesn't, and we do need a 218 process, which would be the second bullet, we had very good and strict accounting to be able to show exactly what the costs are related to each zone of the LLD, so that if the council decided to go to a Prop 218 process, we'd be able to say, if the Prop 218 process doesn't pass, then these are the items that we'll have to change or reduce service on. And then kind of the next bullet down is the bigger picture saying, okay, we know exactly what our costs on the landscaping. Here's what else we need to do for a Prop 218 process. If that doesn't work, then we're looking at some other funding mechanism to get to item number 3.
Toby, who's doing the landscaping now for the LLDs?
City staff,
City
primarily.
staff.
Yeah, with Howard Training Center supplementing that as well. So it's a combination of those two.
Do we know, is it easy for us to find out how much it's costing us in city staff time? Or is it really not broken down like that?
It's not broken down by zone, by activity, and that's what, by doing it, a contractor will provide us that detailed cost accounting. And we're getting better and better each year of being able to track, and some of the asset management stuff that Robin's in charge of putting in place is tracking their time more efficiently, so that when, you know, a parks guy moves from 3 landscape areas in a day, that he's hitting that time, you know, an hour here, 2 hours there. That's still evolving over time, that we're getting better and better at it, but a contract process where we got the line items detailed will give us a real true number.
Vice Mayor Kline?
Couple questions. First one is, when you say you want to hire a contractor, aren't you essentially saying you want to hire a consultant? If not, what's the difference between a consultant and a contractor? What are they going to do different?
Consultant and his design services. The contractor is actually physically doing work. The difference primarily would be the physical working in the field versus doing plans and specs. This is not a consultant. This is a contractor.
Physically, explain to me what kind of physical working in the field are they going to do when you're trying to...
Trimming trees, pulling weeds, aerating grass, everything you can think of a landscape. That's what this contractor would be doing.
Versus the consultant that just sits there and tells you, I think this is what you need to have done.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, you're hiring a contractor to assess the real cost in each...
No.
No.
That's what this thing says right here. Hire a contractor assuming all responsibility in landscaping in each zone, assessing real cost.
The contractor to assume the responsibilities of landscaping, we will do the assessing of the cost based on the contractor's bid and work.
Okay. Second question. So if we turn around and do a Prop 218 to make these lighting districts solvent, you know, so they pay for themselves, when you said in about 16 years the loan's going to be paid off, are we going to reduce?
Correct. When those costs drop, then the district would be adjusted at that time.
So the way the 72 is originally written is it's either CPI or true cost, whichever is less, is how we can charge. So unfortunately, that's why we've only been able to increase by CPI and not true cost, because the CPI is lower. So yes, if cost comes down, we can go down.
Okay.
All right, at this time, I'm going to open it up to the public, see if anyone would like to comment on this item.
It's all Greek to me. I don't understand what, you know, it seems like you form a district, a lighting district, and then you look at it. Before you formed it, you should have looked and see who needed the real improvements in their situation, and maybe they needed to be in a special district where their problems would be solved before something that, like a contractor, a developer would put in a subdivision and all the things that they need to have in the subdivision, and they would be in a different district than those folks that don't have sidewalks, don't have landscaping, don't have lights. It seems to me that it were just lumped into a big pot, stirred around, and then here's how much it cost you. And I just don't, that's why I say I don't understand why the poor folk get lumped in with the rich folk. It's not, it doesn't seem that, if that's the way it is.
No, it doesn't work that way. The way it works is when, when development was occurring in the first part of the city's inception, there were no lighting and landscape districts, okay? In 1987, because there was the notice that there was a deficiency in costs for these services, there were districts created. So when a new subdivision came in, they had to annex into a lighting and landscape district. So the people that live in those areas pay a fee to maintain those. The ones that were prior to that do not pay a fee. So now when the city goes out and does those services, the one area is paying for a fee for those services to be maintained. The other area, the fee is coming out of the general fund and so what we're doing is the area that has the lighting and landscape district is in a negative. So are the other people that aren't in the district, but their negative is pulling from the general fund. So we're looking to increase the lighting and landscaping district's fee to the people who are already paying it to make them revenue neutral, but we're not going to do anything to the people that have been a part of no LLD but still need those services. So they will continue to drain on the general fund.
That's why I think you need to look at maybe developing more of these districts for those.
If we were to do that, that has to go to the public, and if the public says no, then they don't get the service, which is what we're trying.
115,000 people say no, and there's 40-some thousand people living in the city. It just, I said, you can't fix voter apathy.
So I think, well, you're looking for direction here, but I think the direction I'm hearing is that we probably need to go down this step. We need to find out what the true costs are, find out how we can, maybe find efficiencies. I'm not saying we will, but see if we can find efficiencies that allows the LLDs or that shows the LLDs aren't as big a draw as they have been. And then personally, I still want to explore the option of how we do this something citywide, and that's just me feeling that I believe it needs to be fair across the entire city, not just for the LLDs.
And I think that's something, as part of the general plan process, it would be a really good policy statement in that general plan process to be able to identify that as a deficiency and a need in the city, and that way it creates kind of that top-down approach to saying this is a policy and a goal of this council to see that this is done. You create that policy as part of the general plan, and we can continue working on it, but it's a real good systematic approach where we identify this is a goal for the council in this document, though that we set some time frames because it's a large undertaking. This is not going to be an easy process on current staffing levels. That would be a big bite to handle right now, or we might need one of Councilmember Kline's favorite words. So I think it's almost a 4-letter word for him, but a consultant to help us do some of that work. And we do use MBS, who does most of our engineers reports for our lighting and landscaping district, and we've consulted them. That process to go down that road is arduous at best.
Okay, Councilmember Lane?
Yeah, just a comment. In these newer areas, obviously the landscaping's a big deal. I mean, when you go into the older areas, you don't see the landscaping that is in, Eastgate, all down the thoroughfares that they got to take care of. And I mean, there's a lot. You don't get that into your older areas. So not saying that everybody shouldn't share the cost, that you're saying. But
no, I'm not saying everybody should share in the cost. The LLDs have to maintain themselves.
Right. But let me just finish real quick. In saying that, moving forward with our general plan, those are some of the things we probably should be looking at. That cost of these landscaped areas that is really taking a toll. We hear it all the time on our city staff. Should we be looking at our general plans and that sort of thing and looking at different ways of unifying the subdivisions and that sort of thing? Or
the newer the subdivision, the better the numbers are.
Okay.
What we're finding is the oldest districts and zones are 30 years old, right? So our expectation of what costs were 30 years ago to maintain a, backing lot wall, it's just very different today. I mean, and what we know today and what we're building into lighting and landscaping zones today are much more comprehensive because we have a better handle of what those costs are than what we had 30 years
So
ago.
we have identified some things then
Absolutely.
already,
and
before even going,
we got into, 06, 07, really 05 when the market was going crazy, and you started benching off of that. So we get better and better. It's just, the older the information, that CPI was just not enough to keep up with, significant changes in cost of doing business.
yeah, I don't know in lighting district and that sort of thing, I don't know if this is for this subject or not, but, we've talked about, the cameras and that sort of thing out throughout the city. Could that be something that could be brought in to something like this to, more bang for the buck, if you will?
Couldn't be as part of a lighting and landscaping district. It's very specific in what can or can't be included in there. But if another mechanism was chosen, either a parcel tax or something else, then you could lump other things in there. So it's a matter of what mechanism is used for the revenue source as to what can or can't be included. If you're primarily just going to go with a citywide lighting and landscaping district and get everybody to annex into that district, then you're limited as to what exactly is included. And it's just really lighting and landscaping this general benefit.
Yeah, and I guess just where I'm coming from, if I look at this map here and I look at the yellow north of Hatch right there at the corner of Moffett and Hatch, those people living in that subdivision don't have any more lighting and landscaping than the people in the catty corner that are to the southwest. But yet, the people in the yellow are paying a fee to maintain that. The people in the white are not.
Across the city, there's 2,200 LEDs, and those are all in landscape and lighting districts in their own zones. Total in general, there's about 2,500 lights. So there's about 300 to 400 lights there that are city maintained, but TID owns and operates the wooden poles. So there's 2,200 lights, 2192 I believe is the number, that are in zones, and there's a total of 2,500 to 2,600 lights total.
Okay.
So the 6,600 or the 6,500 homes that are in a district have a huge, 95, 98% of the lights in the city.
Okay.
And it goes the same with the landscaping as well. The landscaping that the general fund is paying for right now is predominantly, there's a couple of walls that are very minimal. The predominant is the bike paths, is where the general fund part of the landscaping is right now.
Okay, so I guess in hearing this, we just need a breakdown of
We need to know.
what that
We need to know
is.
where our costs are.
Yeah.
Like Toby said, every year we get better and better. But until we get the asset management system to identify exactly where our assets are, what they're costing us, the landscaping and everything else, the best effort that we could do right now is to put together an RFP to have a contractor come in and give us a price to do weed abatement, to do fertilizing, to do aeration, tree trimming per zone, per district, and get some real numbers.
Yeah, and I would also like to know, I know we're talking about lighting and landscaping. Do we have any clue as to what percentage is lighting and what percentage is landscaping when it comes to cost?
Yeah, we have those broken down.
We do?
Yeah, that's the easiest part to break out.
Yeah, we got TID bills. That's like Toby said, that's the easiest part. But within those, we don't know what those costs are. For example, is that, on the lighting side, we have TID telling us we have 40 LED bulbs at these intersections or 90 LED bulbs at the intersections when we know we only have a 40. We still have to go through and identify all the assets.
And what percentage of the overall cost is for landscaping and one is for lighting? Just a rough percentage. It's not 50-50, I would bet.
It's not 50-50, but it looks more like 60-40, 70-30?
60-40, yeah, 65.
Okay, but again, this is just for the LLDs.
Landscape and lighting district
But
as a whole.
that isn't for the other areas in there. I'm looking at it totality-wise.
To put it into totality is that it goes along the lines with the lights themselves. If there's 2,200 LEDs in zones, there's another 300 lights, street lights that are out there that are not in a zone, which is about a 95 to a 5%. So if you want us to go that round, you could probably go 90% is in a district and 10% the general fund is picking up.
It's probably pretty similar in the landscaping side of things too, because the older areas don't have that backing lot type of configuration, so it's
And they
probably
don't have the lights, they don't have,
probably a 90-10-ish range for landscaping as well.
I just want to be fair. That's
well,
all.
and I get that completely, but you know, we really need to analyze this in the totality part, because you know, the lights that are not in a district are high pressure sodium bulbs on a pole. Okay, and those high pressure sodiums on a pole are costing us about 4 to 1 to what our LEDs are costing us. The problem is that the city pays for that cost. The city can't do any maintenance on that pole. I mean, look how long it took me to get the pole over next to your house, TID to come out and work on that light. After 3 emails and a couple of phone calls, I'm paying for this, come fix the light. I can't touch the pole. You know, we need to get to that levels to say, are we gonna put it, you know, replace that pole, buy it from TID, put an LED up there, whatever the case is.
Okay. All right, is that the direction that the council wants to go? Is to utilize the staff's recommendation and then bring it back to us after you have a better
Yes.
handle? Okay, that work for?
Yes. Just making sure I got nods. You had nods.
Yes.
You got all 5? All right, perfect. That's what we needed.
Okay. With that, I beat that one to death, so just wanted to make sure.
I agree.
So, all right, council member referrals. Are there any council members that would like to have an item placed on a future agenda? Okay, hearing none. Reports, I have nothing to report this time. Council member Ryno?
Well, I'd like to bring up the Christmas Tree Lane opening, but I know city manager and Tom want to do that, so I have nothing to say.
Vice Mayor Kline?
I have nothing.
Councilmember Lane?
No, I guess nothing.
Councilmember Durossette?
Nothing.
Okay, we'll move Ms. Dean. Tom?
Nothing, Mayor.
Toby?
Since Councilmember Ryno didn't want to announce it, just a reminder, everybody knows one of our biggest events of the year, Christmas Festival, is this Saturday at 5:30. Obviously, the public is invited. It's a big event, so get there early and enjoy. Looks like the forecast so far looks nice and crisp, winter evening, so should be a great event, so make sure you get out there for that. We have finally, after much work, got the first meeting of the Centennial Committee scheduled for next Tuesday. That's December 6th at 5:30. We'll be here in the community center. That is open. We did have a number of people who were interested in that committee that are going to be there, but if anybody is still interested of joining that committee, they're welcome to attend. Trying to kick that process off. Our Centennial would be in February of 2018, so trying to get that process going for next year. And the last thing, just to update council, I've let you know on the Mitchell Ranch project, the appeal was not filed by the Citizens for Ceres. The only thing we're waiting on now is the Supreme Court actually has, California Supreme Court has the option of pulling that themselves, and they have until December 4th to do that. Once that date passes on December 5th, the CEQA portion of that case would be officially and completely over. Which would allow the complete move forward of that project. So we're looking forward to the next deadline and that overall process. We're getting closer to the end of that. That's it.
Tom?
I now have nothing to report.
Daryl? Brian? Jeremy? Bettina? With that, Supervisor DeMartini? All right, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn to closed session.
No.
He would not even talk to me. Really? She stopped and talked to me.